Well, good evening, everybody. I can see there's already a ton of comments and so on inside here. So, who do we have in tonight? First of all, can you let me know if everybody can see me, they can hear me, all the usual things? Is everything looking and sounding okay before we kick things off? And then once I kind of find out, then we're going to have a couple of sort of welcomes this evening. So it's good to see some faces in, especially some oxygen faces in. So yeah, can you just let me know if everybody can hear and see and everything okay? Just be great if you could do that for me. So we have a couple of nice faces in. Stratos, good to see you. Good evening, Stratos. Good to see yourself. Hope you're doing well. And yep, all good. Thank you, Michael. You are an absolute gentleman for letting me know. Nice haircut. Thank you. Okay, so before we sort of say hello and everything, then I just want to quickly say we've got a special guest in tonight, and I'm sure you all know Kyle Van Deusen. So I want to say a welcome to Kyle tonight, who's joining me for the first time. So good evening, Kyle. I hope you're doing well this evening. How
I
are
think
you?
I have to start this off by saying howdy. How's it going?
Howdy to yourself too. Okay, so if anybody that doesn't know, Kyle, would you like to introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are, what you do, and why you're here this evening and joining me?
Awesome. Yes. So my name's Kyle Van Duzen. Most people that know me in here probably know me from the Admin Bar, which is a community I help run with my good buddy Matt Siebert. We do all kinds of fun things around agency life and helping each other kind of get through the struggles that are involved with that. So our Facebook community is a huge part of that. We have a podcast, things like that. And I also run a web agency called Ogle Web Design here in Texas. That's how I got into this business. And as far as why I'm here tonight, I have no idea. Paul just for some reason thought it would be okay to let me on his channel, so he's unleashed the beast today.
Yeah, I think it was the $200 you sent me in PayPal money. I think that's the reason why.
That's all it
But
costs to get on.
it don't
Everybody
cost. I'm
send
cheap. That's what I'm gonna say. I'm cheap. I'm cheap.
everybody
So
send Paul $200. You'll have your
yeah,
turn.
please do. Everybody send me $200. It'll be a good evening. Okay, so thank you very much tonight, joining me, Kyle. It's great to see and have you here. So I'm going to do a couple of hellos this evening. I'm sure there's going to be a few faces in that you are more than sort of aware and accustomed to. So we've got. Let's have a little look. Always good to have Stratos in, who we know is a big oxygen proponent. And speaking of oxygen proponents, we've got Permaslug in tonight. We also have Elijah in from Oxygen as well. So absolutely fantastic to see you guys here. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're safe wherever you are. And we also have Innocent Maguara. I have no idea if I said that right, but good evening and welcome to Uganda. Hope you're doing well. Anya, good to see you as well. Nice to have all the stalkers in tonight, I see. Good evening, Germany. And we got Mucha Design. We've got Michael Wright, who is the original stalker tonight. So good to see you in, Michael, as well. And Steve Pro, always good to have you in. We've got Mystigma. So again, good to see you. Spenny, always good to see you. Davey Dennis. Mark Sonin, I hope I said that right. And Heather, good. Wow, we've got a few people in tonight already, so that's good to see you all. So, John Hussey, good to see you in as well, and Michael M. So, how's it going to go this evening? Well, first of all, it's going to be a pretty laid-back conversation between myself, between Kyle, and all you guys. So, if you've got comments on anything we talk about tonight, please do drop those in the chat section. And if you enjoy the video tonight, you enjoy the live stream, don't forget to give that thumbs up because it just helps YouTube know that you like what we're doing. Okay, so we've got 3 different topics we're going to cover tonight. And let's be honest about it, if we didn't talk about this first topic, we would all wonder what the heck is going on. So the first thing we're going to talk about this evening is something that I know is very close to Kyle's heart, and that's care plans or maintenance plans, however you want to sort of label them. So it's just kind of, first of all, why and how to promote website care plans to clients. Because we know that when it comes to selling services, once you've done the website, some clients can kind of see that in a negative light, even though you're only really doing it for their benefit to make sure that their experiences are seamless, flawless, and they know they've got that support mechanism in place. But how have you found convincing clients, or have you had to convince clients how to, sort of take on these care plans? What's your experience been of selling care plans, Kyle? So I'm going to pass that over to you, young man.
Yeah, so I mean, from I think it starts from the agency perspective, right? This is a great way to introduce recurring revenue into your agency. And without that recurring revenue, this job can be a little bit painful sometimes when one month you're able to sell a bunch of projects and make a lot of money. And then the next month, you can't seem to find the clients that you were finding before. So that back and forth trying to ride that roller coaster of income becomes very difficult. Where care plans come in, they give you a nice source of recurring revenue, and you can kind of steady the waters a little bit in your agency. So one of the big goals I had for my agency when I was still working a full-time job and doing my agency on the side, I had a few benchmarks I wanted to hit before I got to where I could leave my full-time job and run my agency. And one of those was a certain amount of recurring revenue. So I knew no matter what, at least I could, pay the mortgage for the house. At least we wouldn't be homeless, like worst case scenario, right? So obviously growing that over time every year, I set goals on kind of where I want to be by the end of the year as far as recurring revenue, because it just makes my stress level go down a ton. Knowing that, each month I'm going to be bringing in a minimum amount of money. But as far as selling care plans, I've gone about it several different ways and I've learned a lot over the years. But for me, the biggest part of it is just making sure you explain to clients early and upfront that their website is going to require, ongoing care and support in order for it to do the things they want it to do. So, if you spring this on them after you launch the website or right before you launch the website, they're probably going to be offended because you've sold them on something that they didn't realize would require all this extra work. So the number one thing I always tell people is just to make sure you bring it up like as early as your first conversation, or at least in your proposal when you send that over to them, because the earlier they know about this, the sooner they can kind of digest that information and kind of take in that idea. So for me, it's about making sure I explain this up front. I have a couple guides on my website, on my agency's website, where I'll send my prospects to when they first make an inquiry. So some of those cover like 5 questions every business owner asks before buying a website, and in there I talk about the ongoing maintenance side of things. And I have some other resources, a website buyer's guide, which kind of tells them about the entire process of buying a website. And one of the things in there is, realizing that you're going to have some ongoing time investment and or financial investment in having your website and operating it.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that, especially when people are new to, agencies or freelancing, whatever it is, when they're dealing with clients face to face with clients, a big part of what we do is educate the client, to explain to them that, having a website isn't like just buying something that never needs to be maintained, never needs to be updated, doesn't need to be cared for. I mean, when you buy a car, when you buy a house, when you buy anything like that, they have ongoing running costs. And part of what we should do is to educate and inform them. So like you say, there's no surprises towards the end of the project life cycle. Whether you do that right at the beginning, the initial conversation, whether you do that as part of the proposal, which I think any ongoing costs should always be included in the proposal. So, whoever's looking to make the decision, the final decision maker in a company or whatever, they've got all the facts they need, all the ongoing, the maintenance, the care, the domain registrations and renewals, the hosting, all those kinds of things. And that's part of our job, is to tell them and explain to them what they need and the ongoing sort of cost implications of doing that side of things. From their point of view, it could be a time cost, or from our point of view, where it's a time is money kind of cost, and we're doing the service for them. So totally agree with what you're saying there.
And I think part of it is kind of the positioning too, of if you just let them know up front. And I think this is especially important with people who have not had a website before. And a lot of people in the time we're in now, there's still a ton of people that have never owned a website. We kind of live in this bubble where all of us think about websites 24/7. But if you just went out in public, most people don't own and operate a website. So I think it's really important for those people that have never done this before, when you explain that up front, as just a matter of fact. Now you could get in deep and say, well, with WordPress, you need this kind of maintenance, but if we use something else, maybe you don't. I usually don't go that far with them. WordPress is my main tool of choice, so that's the point of reference I'm explaining to them. But when you explain that up front without pushing your care plan services, what you're really doing is just educating them and telling them, okay, these are the things it's going to require. So then when you follow that up with, but don't worry about any of that because I can take care of that for you, it's kind of like you've relieved them of a problem they didn't even realize they had, right? And I've even had people come back to me, especially with companies that are just starting out and not had a website before. Just like when I buy something that I've never bought before, I'll go get quotes or check prices from multiple different places. And a lot of people are doing that with us. And I've had people come back before and say they were following up with me or going with me or getting the proposal from me because I was the only one that talked to them about that. So they kind of felt like maybe the other agencies weren't letting them know about that up front. So I think just being upfront and honest and being that person that's there to help them is it puts you in a good position and really sets you up for success in that standpoint.
Yeah, and I think to kind of go back to what you were saying as well, the different articles and things that you've got on your website. I think this is a good topic. We discussed a couple of weeks ago about putting content onto your website that helps educate and inform people, because that can be a good way of actually winning clients over, because you will being open and honest about what the whole process entails. Because, as you say, most of us that have been doing this for any number of years live and breathe the different things that we're talking about. We understand the difference between WordPress and Webflow, Oxygen and Elementor and Divi and all those kinds of things, and what is the right solution for a particular project. But they don't know. It's the same as most people. If they take their car in to be serviced, they don't understand what the engine does and all the various different sort of like sensors and the engine management systems and all those kinds of things. They just want their car to get them from A to B comfortably without rattling, banging, and puffing smoke out. Oversimplification, but it's the same kind of thing. We just want a smooth ride, and we know that part of that is going to be looking after things, servicing it. Some things we can do ourselves, but the majority of the more complex things, we would feel more comfortable giving it to someone that knows what the heck they're doing, because it'll probably be cheaper for us in the long run because they know what they're doing and they can do it more effectively than we could. So, yeah, I think to go back to the sort of education and information side of things, I think that is the key that a lot of people don't necessarily understand, which kind of brings me on to my second point that you just kind of touched upon. WordPress. Now, we all know and love and use WordPress for all the positives and the negatives that it actually has. But like you said, your choice is WordPress. And with WordPress comes maintenance and updates and incompatibilities and all the things that we know that when a new update comes out, we brick it a little bit when we think, I've got 20 client sites that are going to update and I don't want to do it. No matter how many backups and things you've got in place, when big updates come out, you can't help but feel that sort of like that little pit in your stomach, empty a little bit and just go, I don't want to do this. I know my day's going to go bad. So what are your thoughts on sort of I don't want to say selling as in like you're forcing someone to purchase it, because we're not, but selling the benefits and the virtues of having a care plan in place, when a big part of that is because of the platform that we choose, in this example, WordPress, because of the foibles that has, knowing that we've got to deal with updates and they are coming out pretty regularly with page builders and WordPress core and those kinds of things. So how do you feel about that? And if you get questioned by that by a client that might know a little bit, how would you deal with that side of things to allay any sort of like doubts or anything that they might have in their mind?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the clients that know a little bit are my least favorite ones. Like, I rather them know nothing or know a whole lot, because when they know a little bit, that is really tricky. But
Yep.
yeah, so I think, you know, obviously WordPress has its problems. All platforms have their problems, right? No platform is perfect. But with WordPress comes the flexibility of really being able to do anything you want to do. There's pretty much a solution for everything inside WordPress. And for me, because my agency is focused around building WordPress websites, because that's what I do, I really don't go into it necessarily selling WordPress as a platform. I'm more selling my services and what I can do for people. And the tool I use to do that is WordPress. So if I have a contractor come over to my house and they're going to put in a new shower, I might like one brand of hammer and he likes a different one, but I don't tell him which brand of hammer to bring with him. So really, they're not coming to me for a platform most of the time. They're coming to me for a solution, and this is the best way I know to provide that solution for them. So I really hadn't had to struggle with having to justify WordPress to people. Now, there was a point in time when um, I would have felt really backed in a corner had I got any pushback, but I've started exploring things like Webflow and understanding how that works and where that might be a better solution for people, and spend a ton of time going through their training and stuff on their website and their YouTube channel, which is fantastic, and learning how that system works enough that I can be comfortable with that. And when the right project comes along where it makes sense, I don't have a problem recommending something instead of WordPress if I feel confident that's the better solution for the project. So I think all this is a little bit personal. Are there some projects where it might just be better to hand code the whole thing? Maybe. I don't know. I couldn't do that, so I can't really sell that solution to people. So I think of it more as selling the solutions I provide. That's what I'm selling, and then the tools I use to do that is more my decision than the client's decision.
Good point. Good point. Um, yeah, it is difficult. Like I say, I think as you're an agency owner, whereas I'm like a freelancer kind of thing, and I've had a business in the past where web design was part of that. We do need to keep abreast of the different technologies that are kind of pushing forward. Webflow is a great platform, and like you say, the training website is brilliant. I love their videos; they're absolutely awesome. The guy they've got doing it, well, actually, the three or four of them that do it,
Yeah.
they know how to make a good video and make it entertaining and educational, which is great stuff. Um, but yeah, I completely forgot what I was going to say. Actually, no, I do know. So let's take us on to that second point that I want to cover today. I'm going to pull up my slide number 2 now because I've got buttons to do it. You recently switched over to Oxygen, and without going into the politics of why, from a technical point of view, why did you choose Oxygen over maybe something like Webflow or one of the other platforms that are out there that give you similar sets of tools? Was there something specific with Oxygen you liked, or is it something more of just it kind of resonated with you and just kind of clicked really quickly?
Honestly, it didn't resonate with me or click with me quickly. To be perfectly honest, I had a lot of friends that are in our group and moved to Oxygen 6 months ago, 12 months ago. And I honestly never went to their website. I never looked at it. It never occurred to me that it was a product for me, because it was always kind of billed as like the developer's tool, somebody, who would consider themselves a developer. And I come from a design background. Before I ran this agency, I was a graphic designer for 15 years in the print industry. I knew nothing about code. I still know very, very little about code. So it just didn't seem to me like, Oxygen was a tool that was right for me. However, I've been using Elementor for several years now, and I think like every Elementor user have, you know, gets to the point where you're frustrated about how many steps you have to put in place to get the performance you want to out of the website. Not saying it's not possible. I see people get awesome scores with Elementor all the time, but you have to put in a whole lot of extra work to make that happen. So for me, I was really looking for a solution that, especially with all the changes coming in May, with all the web core vitals and things like that, like I really wanted to be able to build websites that I knew would perform well. So I started looking at options. I started looking at Webflow when our good buddy Dave Foy left WordPress and joined on the Webflow train. And for me, Webflow was way over my head at that point. And I decided, well, let's give Oxygen a try. And when I used it and started to kind of get the hang of it, and I was forced to kind of learn more about how HTML actually works, how CSS actually works. Not that you have to like hand code a bunch of things inside of Oxygen. You don't. You can, but you don't have to. You do have to have a better understanding of how those things work in order to understand how Oxygen works versus a page builder like Elementor or Beaver Builder or even Gutenberg. But I basically went all in on watching every bit of training I could do, every bit of training I could find for Oxygen, and Let's see. Within 2 or 3 days of purchasing it, I rebuilt one of my websites with Oxygen, and the experience was really great. I made tons of mistakes with it. When I go back into it now, it's really annoying how bad I was at like naming classes. So I'll probably end up redoing that website again one day. But the performance benefits I was getting out of that website immediately. I mean, it was night and day, immediately different. And when I started seeing how much more flexible you could be with Oxygen, that's what really hooked me in. Is the only limitation I had was like my imagination and really understanding how the interface works. It wasn't any limitations within the platform itself, and it's just made me, it like really reinvigorated me to start getting more creative and building more things. And it was just an exciting thing for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Is like when you rely on a tool like Elementor, which for most people it's a visual builder. You can get in and you can do more things inside there. There's no two ways about it. You can if you want to, within reason. And if you really want to delve into some of those more advanced features, you can do that. But I think that's where a lot of the fear from a tool like Oxygen kind of comes in. You were under that misconception to a certain extent that you needed to be either a coder or have a good solid understanding of code to even get started in it, let alone start to get more advanced or get more features out of it. But I think, unfortunately, that's one of those things that while I'm sure there's lots of people would like you to believe that I don't think it is necessarily 100% true. There are certain aspects of it, and having used Oxygen myself for various different things, people could quite easily get away with minimal to no knowledge and still be able to create a fully functioning and probably quite fast loading website. But if you do then go that extra little mile and get a bit of an understanding of HTML and CSS, I mean, take out all the cool things you can do with CSS. CSS itself is pretty simple. I'm no coder. I can dabble a little bit in PHP, HTML and stuff like that. I'm fine with, but it's not particularly complex to get your head around once you understand the hierarchy of it and all those kinds of things. So with a little bit of time and effort, you could realistically start to get a lot more out of a tool like Oxygen without having to get in there and really start feeling like you've got to hand code lots of things. Like you say, the way classes are integrated into the whole platform makes it really, really easy. And it's the same with Webflow. I mean, there's a synergistic link between the two of those when it comes to the classes and things like that. That if you plan ahead and you sort of you label your classes and you use those at the right places, you can very quickly make sweeping site-wide changes with just one line of CSS code change, and all of your classes will update accordingly. Which is, yes, you can do the same kind of thing inside Elementor, but it's not necessarily geared to working in that way. So I think you don't need to, I think people need to sort of put the fear of that side of things to the side and test out something like Oxygen, because you can have, is it a 7-day trial of it where you can set up a development environment? I'm sure Elijah or Permaslag or Stardust will let me know. I think it's either 3 days or 7 days where you can set up like a test environment, full install of Oxygen on their servers, and you can play around with it. So you could quite easily have a dabble before you shelled out any kind of money to see if it's something you could really get on with or not. But yeah, I think that misconception needs to be pushed to one side a little bit, and people need to be a little less fearful of trying it out and seeing that you don't necessarily need to have that much of an understanding of those fundamentals, but it never hurts to have them, as like you say, as you were finding out the more you've dabbled with it.
Yeah, and what's been really exciting for me is it's helped me learn a lot more about specifically HTML and CSS. I'm still not touching any PHP because I don't want to brick my website quite yet. But it's given me the opportunity to use those things, to learn those things and use them in a really easy way. So, you're talking about being able to make sweeping changes. The other day I had to make a change to some styles in a client's website. And the only way to really do it is the Elementor website. The only way to really do it the way the website was set up was to style one element, right click it, copy that style, and then open every page on their website one at a time in Elementor and paste the style in. And, it was fairly quick. It took me 15 or 20 minutes, but the whole time I'm just really angry thinking this would have just been like open that class, make whatever changes I need with the builder, and it would have been done in Oxygen. So things like that just make your life a whole lot easier for sure.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I come from a background where I used to use Dreamweaver. So when you're using sort of like your typical HTML and PHP and stuff like that, includes were a massive thing. Once you kind of learned about includes, it was like they are the best thing since sliced bread. And it's basically all an include is, if you've never used it, is it's a way of using one block of code repeatedly. So for example, your footer, which you create as a template, and then your template is referenced on all the pages, with Oxygen or with whatever. When you want to make a change, just one instance of that you make a change to, and then that reflects throughout the entire site. And that kind of is how that works with code side of things. So when you kind of work that way, when you want to make changes, global changes, and you can do it that quickly, that's a godsend. And you can, to a certain extent, use classes and things in a tool like Elementor, but you've got to be so much more forward thinking about adding those in to start off with. Otherwise, they're kind of like an afterthought, as it were, for elemental classes, whereas with Oxygen and with Webflow and stuff like that, they're kind of a core concept inside the software itself. So when you kind of you think like that, moving forward, when you want to make those sweeping changes, it is literally a couple of seconds, and that reflects throughout the entire site.
Yeah, but I mean, with something like Elementor, sure, you can click on an element and assign it a class, but whatever changes you make to that element using the Elementor interface, it's not affecting that class like on a global thing. Like you could give it a class and go in there and write some CSS and then apply that class to things. But what's great with Oxygen, Webflow builders that are thinking in this way is it's actually if you click a different color or left align text or something on that class, you're affecting everything with that class right from the buttons you have inside the interface. Instead of, for Elementor, it seems to me like the way you can use classes inside Elementor is really more to like override something or add something that's not available inside the interface.
Yeah, I think the way I sort of look at it is some of these features in Elementor, and we talk about Elementor because at the end of the day, you've been an Elementor user for a long time. I've been an Elementor user for a long time, and I'm sure many people that are in the comments in the chat tonight are also Elementor users or have been. It honestly feels at times like certain aspects have been bolted on because people have gone on about them for a long time. Like for example, the global colors, the global styling, and so on, the theme styles, whatever you want to kind of call it. They feel like an afterthought. They feel like we need to have something like this because other page builders are using it, so we're going to bolt it on. Whereas, like, you look at something like Bricks, which I tested out yesterday, which we'll come on to a little later. You can so easily create a new global setup inside there, and then you can assign that to any page you want, any template you want. So for me, when I create like front end dashboards, I want the front end dashboard to look different to the rest of the site because it's a dashboard at the end of the day. Well, to do that, it's an absolute pain when it comes to Elementor. I would like to just have multiple different style sheets, multiple different theme styles, and then assign that to this particular page, this particular template, and then change one thing. But it's much more complicated and it's not really integrated into it. Whereas tools like Bricks and I believe with Oxygen and things like that, these things are much, much easier. So it's kind of like, it's thinking, what would the typical designer that might want to have a website that has multiple different parts to it, and they don't necessarily all share that same design aesthetic, what could we do to make their life easier? That's what we can do. That would make it easier. Let's have multiple different setups for that, where you can just reference them on a template or page basis and let people do what they need to do. Different styles of fonts, different colors, those kinds of things. Whereas I don't feel like Elementor has necessarily done that with that kind of thought process in mind, because it feels like it's just been bolted on because it's needed because other page builders are kind of doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think things like that happen. So I don't have a really long frame of reference with WordPress. I guess I started in 2017, so 4 years now. But when I started, I was using Beaver Builder, and I started using Beaver Builder right before Beaver Themer came out. So when Beaver Themer came out, I had no idea what it did, But since everybody was talking about how awesome this was going to be and like how revolutionary this was, I bought it. Right. And so I had no real concept of what it would do. And then learning, on the simple side of what Beaver Themer does, just being able to create your headers and footers and things like that. Like at that point, the page builders weren't doing that. Right. And
Mhm.
now, if a brand new page builder hit the market with a bunch of fanfare and you couldn't control your header and footer, I don't think a lot of people would be very into that because that seems standard now. Like
Yeah.
your page builder has to be able to build everything out. I mean, soon Gutenberg's going to be giving you the ability to do all that. And the color palette example you used, I guess the first one I saw somebody talking about where this was really well thought out and implemented was like in the Cadence theme, where you set up these global colors and then they are affected all throughout the site. That's just part of that system. And now it seems like everybody's integrating that because it makes way more sense to be able to set global colors. But with something like Elementor, where that wasn't part of the core of the software, it's something they've had to add on, which I definitely think they had to add that into it. It doesn't feel as integrated into the
No.
system. Now, I've personally had trouble with their global colors. I was told it wasn't their fault, so we won't place blame. But I've had trouble with those things, and I think that's probably because it's things that have just had to get bolted on over time.
Yeah. There are so many aspects of it that you do kind of feel they're playing catch up on because I mean, Divi was another example of this. I think Divi also suffered from seeing what other page builders were doing and thinking, "Oh crap, we need to have this in there." So they weren't so
That's
much
it. It's
innovating.
it's oh crap. That's
Yeah, it's the oh
exactly what's
crap moment.
happening.
Yeah, the oh crap moment. So yeah, I would say that there's forward thinking page builders that look at it. Maybe they come from a different point of view. Maybe they come from a designer point of view, and they're trying to create a product that they would want to work with because they do this day in day out. So they're in touch with what a typical designer would want and need to do. Maybe it's a case that other companies that develop page builders and tools like this, they've fallen out of touch with that market, and therefore they don't necessarily see what needs to be included from the get-go to make it a product that has the features that we need. And I think, again, to talk about bricks, which we will come on to it a little bit, they do seem to have looked at what are well, two things in my opinion. They've looked at what are the good things inside all the key page builders that are out there right now. What are the things that people really use on a daily basis? And the second thing is, I completely forgot what the second thing is. It was really important too. How professional am I? Yeah, well, we'll stick to the first one. But they're really creating something that is not about hyping it up. It's about fulfilling the needs for people that actually need to create and do a job and make that pretty simple and straightforward and not more complex than it needs to be. So I'm kind of excited to see where that goes. As opposed to that oh crap moment where they're looking at we really need to put this in because this is what people now need, and we should have thought of that 6 months ago, 12 months ago when we built things, but they didn't. And like I say, I think unfortunately that is kind of what's happened over a period of time with Elementor, is that I think maybe they're not keeping up to speed with what their core user base actually wants and needs. And there's
Yeah,
little sparkly bits.
I agree with you there. They also have such a huge user base now
Mm.
too. They probably have a million different opinions of what people
Oh
want
yeah.
and need. So that I'll give it. It's probably hard to listen to everybody there, but like now thinking about your slide you pulled up before we started talking about oxygen, like me making the switch to
Mm.
oxygen. I would say that's not entirely true. And maybe I feel like me saying this will be controversial because I feel like so many people don't feel this way, though I know you and I do because we just talked about it. Like, I still have 40 something sites running Elementor. I have zero plans of rebuilding all those. Now, I just rebuilt the admin bars website because I wanted to eat my dog food, so to say. Like, I've been talking about oxygen a lot. I've been excited about oxygen. There were some things that I was having trouble with on the admin bar site that would have been easier to handle in oxygen. So I rebuilt the admin bars website in oxygen, and I'm happy that I did it. But I'm not going back and rebuilding all of my websites in Elementor. And my controversial point is this: like, you don't have to pick one tool and plant your flag in that tool and say, this is all I use, and it's the best one, and everybody else sucks. And if you don't use this, you're wrong. Like, for some reason in our communities, people are very, and you said this word, tribal, about like the tools they use, but I just don't feel that way at all. Like, I think it's okay for me to build some sites with Elementor, build some with Oxygen. I think it's okay to jump over and build a website with Webflow that's completely outside of the WordPress system. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. I feel like that's totally okay for us to do.
Totally agree. I mean, I've talked about it quite a few times on the different live streams, and I'm quite open about the fact that I think as designers, as, whatever we kind of want to call ourselves, we have an obligation to the client to give them the best product that we can to meet or fulfill their needs. And that isn't always using something like Elementor. There are times where Brizy might be a better option. There are times where a static site might be a better option. There are lots of different options out there that we can look into. And like you say, like I referenced, people do become very tribal about their page builders of choice or their tools of choice. Themes is another one. There's lots of people out there that get really, for the want of a better word, butthurt if you don't love the theme that they love. And it's kind of crazy because at the end of the day, there's a big enough market for all of these tools out there. And what is one person's sort of like poison is another person's, they just love it. They can't get enough of it. It's the best thing. Whether that's just the way that different people are programmed for the way that these particular tools are sort of put together, I don't know. But you see people are going like, oh, but if you use Oxygen, you can't use Elementor because this is better than that's better than this. It doesn't matter. You could have all the widgets in the world, but if you only ever use 5 of them, does it really matter what tool you use as long as it has those 5 widgets you need to use and rely on? Not at all.
It's been a couple months now. There was a AppSumo deal for some landing page builder, and you did some videos on it. I don't remember what it was called.
Pages.
Swipe pages. Okay. So I didn't have, and I don't really have a need for that. And you can absolutely do everything Swipe Pages does with just WordPress, whatever theme you use, whatever page builder you use. Let's not get mad at each other. They're all do what Swipe Pages does. However, I had a client, one of my biggest clients I ever had. He was a PPC agency. He had a really, really small, a really focused niche on a specific industry, and like even a niche within that industry. And he really cornered the market on that because he was the guy to go to if you did this service. And he came to me, he was using, I don't know, one of those landing page builders out there. He was using that. I'd never heard of it. He was wanting to come to me for some design help because the pages he was building looked like they were built with one of those generic landing page builders. So I told him, well, I use WordPress. Here's why. Here's what I do. And he decided, this was fairly early in my career, he decided to go ahead and go with me. And we ended up rebuilding probably, 50 landing pages with WordPress. And eventually that relationship ended up not working out because of how expensive it got to be managing 50 WordPress websites on, we had several different servers on different hosting accounts and updates and care plans for all. I mean, it was a nightmare. If your job is to build a single landing page for a PPC campaign, and you're going to have tons of them, WordPress really isn't the best solution. You don't really want to be doing that with WordPress. I found that out the hard way. But it just goes to show you, there is reason to use different things and try different things and learn about different things. And there's no one builder, no matter what your preference is, that does everything better than anything else ever could.
No, I mean, Swipe Pages was one of those things that look, I bought, I think Landingy was another one I bought ages ago from AppSumo. And I don't really have a need, or I haven't really had a need to build landing pages too much for myself. I bought it for myself more than anything. But it's one of those things that when you realize you can do so many different things that does inside, WordPress with whatever page builder you want. But when you want to run A/B testing with multiple different landing pages of the same, to do the same thing, and you want to monitor those, and you want to do all the different things, and you don't want to deal with updates, you don't want to deal with the security, you don't want to deal with all those things, a tool like that is just easier. I could literally create a layout for a landing page. I could then create 3 variations of it, set it up to A/B test all of those. I can have it so it'll monitor and track leads, all those kinds of things, and I could probably have that set up in 2 hours, and I haven't got to worry about maintaining that or updating it or checking to see if there's a new update or get an email to say there's a new update for WordPress and there's a new update for the plugin, there's a new update for the A/B testing plugin, blah, 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 blah. You kind of get the picture. So you kind of think that just makes life easier and quicker, and it just takes the pain away for what we're doing there. Which leads me on to one completely different thing, which is I need to thank tonight's sponsor. So you're going to have to bear with me for at least 30 seconds, Kyle. So,
let's do it.
Just to sort of say, tonight's episode is sponsored by those lovely people over at CrocoBlock. And if you've never been over to CrocoBlock, go and take a look, because they have some amazing tools and plugins that work with both Elementor and, thankfully, Gutenberg. And the use case for Gutenberg is getting larger. There's more links between Gutenberg and CrocoBlock. So if you haven't checked it out, visit crocoblock.com and have a little look. And like I said, I just want to say a big thank you to them for sponsoring tonight's episode of Lockdown Livestream. Okay, so with the bills being paid, let's have a little look at some of the comments, and then we'll get on to the third and final topic before we open up the Q&A session. But what do we have? We have lots and lots of comments and things going on and lots of conversations, so I need to find something that has some relation to what we've been talking about. Otherwise, it's going to be just gibberish. So Paul is saying, Beaver Builder for life. So, I mean, I suppose if you are a Beaver Builder user, then, yeah, you probably are in it for life.
Yeah, well, Paul just also posted a video of using live canvas, so I would watch out getting that BB for life tattoo.
He's going to run out of space. It'll be something else on the other arm.
Cross it out.
Start to get a big X through it. Stratos. So Zion is an example of this. It's not implemented yet, a full header building experience. I don't think I've tested Zion Build, right? Have you taken a look at that at all, Kyle?
Not even heard of it.
No, that's the thing. I mean, there are lots of builders coming out, and I think it's going to be difficult to break into that market sector. If I'm honest, I'm absolutely blown away by the interest that Bricks has had. I mean, like I say, I literally put that video together last night because I had builders in for the last 3 days and I couldn't record anything. So it's like they left at about 2 o'clock. So I'm going to quickly just put this together because I didn't have time to do a more detailed tutorial. Chuck that out quickly. And I think that's had well over 5,000 views in, well, less than a day, which is pretty awesome for a builder that most people probably didn't even know about before that. So I think there's definitely, I think there are people interested in looking for an alternative to some of the more mainstream things that are out there right now. You know, I think people may be feeling a little frustrated with maybe not necessarily being heard with the things that they need, and they are looking for a viable alternative. And I think, again, it's one of those things that you see it every single day, and I'm sure you've seen it numerous times in the admin bar group and so on, is how many people are jumping over and embracing Oxygen, which, like I say, is no bad thing, because the more users, the more money that gets put into the company, the more opportunity for taking on more developers, and the more that tool can expand and grow, more support, those kinds of things. So, I mean, I'm kind of excited to see where this goes. I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you think that people are maybe getting a little disillusioned with some of the main players that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised how much interest there has been about Bricks, because I kind of get the feeling that people are getting like, we're teetering on the point of being burnt out with more tools. Like if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, Kyle, I have an idea for a page builder. What do you think?" I would say, I don't know that I would like spend my next year building a new page builder. Like, it feels like the market's getting very, very saturated. And with the fact that Gutenberg, while still not quite my cup of tea as it sits today, like, it does seem eventually it's going to be in a place that fully competes with page builders. And when that point happens, I think the market for third-party page builders is going to get smaller, because it's just so easy to install WordPress and everything's already there and ready to go. So I don't know. I feel like there's room for innovation, obviously. And I think new page builders coming out, or page builders coming out with new features that push another page builder, all that's good. Competition is good. You know, I think that really in the end helps everyone. But I do feel like I don't know. I feel like a lot of people have anxiety about all the tools that we have. And even when I just started talking about Oxygen, like, we do some affiliate stuff inside the admin bar, but I try not to do a ton of it. It helps keep the lights on, which is nice. But there was no affiliate incentive for me to talk about Oxygen. I was talking about Oxygen because I really wanted to use it and share people with the cool things I found with it. But it did seem like, every fourth or fifth comment was like, oh God, now I got to learn something new. Oh no, now I have to, pay for this. And, I feel like people have anxiety about like all the new things coming out. And so I think part of it is you don't have to just pick with one thing and stick with it forever. And B, you don't have to try everything. Like if you're happy with yours, like just it's okay that people are happy with something else. Like you can still tattoo BB for life like Paul on your arm and you're okay.
Not
It's
not this
fine.
Paul though, not
Not
me.
this Paul, other Paul.
Speaking of things like that, I mean, Michael, as you said, not committing to one builder has really resonated. Be the best at one thing versus expand your skill set mindset. This kind of is a good point. Where we are getting so many different page builders, so many different tools coming out, and with the advent of Gutenberg becoming a more powerful force inside this, especially like you say, with Google rolling out that update in May, which is going to focus a big part of that is going to be on speed. You know, it is something that page builders are generally notorious for adding additional bloat that's not necessarily needed. So this kind of links me up to a product that I've been talking about. I've been looking at and working with the company, which converts WordPress sites to static sites. So basically, you have a development environment on their server that you have a copy of WordPress, and you do all your building like you would as normal. Create your posts, your pages, all those kinds of things. And then you export that over to your actual physical live domain for the website. And it just converts it to a static version of that site. Do you kind of think, and I don't know if you've got any experience in this kind of thing, do you think that's going to kind of become something like a halfway house where people get the benefit and flexibility of using their page builders of choice, and then they can output it as a static HTML to get the benefits of not having all of that potential bloat that a tool like, a page builder on top of WordPress, on top of a theme, inherently adds to the whole end result of a website? I mean, do you have any experience of those kinds of things, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I played with one. I'm not going to name who they are because my characterization of it wouldn't be fair because it's very dated. So I played with one. It's been well over a year ago because it was pre-COVID. So it's like BC, yeah, BC
Yeah,
before COVID.
yeah.
I played with one of those because I really like this idea, like the security part of it, the performance part of it. Like if we could take those are like the hardest things about WordPress: the updates, the security, the speed sometimes depending on how you're building it. Like if we could eliminate all those things by pushing something out as just a flat HTML and CSS website without that content management system attached to it, that would be really awesome. And the one I played with worked similar to what you're talking about, where on the development side of it, you had WordPress, and then you pressed a button and it updated everything on the live site, and boom. So all those systems worked fine. The site was faster. The site did what it was, for the most part, did what it was supposed to, but it was still limited on some of the functionalities that are built into WordPress that required, the calls to the database and the whole CMS being in there. So at that point, when I tried it, and it's been, like I said, well over a year, it wouldn't allow me to take some of the sites I have and use them. Like those sites were not compatible with being able to do that. So I don't know where that's at right now, but that's certainly an interesting concept that I know a lot of money is going into.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. I think if they can iron those kind of bugs, those limitations out, because I don't know how well it would work with e-commerce. It's something I'd need to experiment with. But I mean, e-commerce is probably one of the sort of the prime candidates for something where there's going to be a lot of database calls because a lot of products and shopping carts and all those kinds of things. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes. And again, I think it's one of those things that maybe for simpler sites, this could be that happy medium where you get the benefit of WordPress, but you get to spit out a HTML, CSS based site that is reducing the amount of bloat and the junk that kind of just naturally goes with that kind of set of tools to go with it. So fingers crossed, those kinds of things will open it up for people that do still want to use the benefits of a page builder and still benefit from a fast loading website. So, and One that I actually quite like the way they've done it is Brizy. I like what they've done with Brizy Cloud. I don't know if you've experimented or played around with
I
that at
haven't.
all. I honestly do. If you get sort of half a day that you can spend a little time, because you can just set up and use the free option. You only got to sign up to it, and you can use the free version of it. But it gives you all the benefits of using the Brizy page builder, or Breezy, depending upon how you want to say it. Gives you all the benefits of that. And then what you can do is you can literally push that out to a domain that's on their cloud hosting with an SSL and everything, or you can push it over to your own live domain. And then the live version of the site is just a static site, but you've got that, again, synergistic link back to the cloud server where you can then quite easily make changes and push those over to the live site. That way, and I believe they've also introduced the blog aspect of that, so you can now do blogging. And I think they either are or have introduced some form of e-commerce option into it. So it would be nice if they could do something like that, because I think that would definitely help set them apart and limit the impact that people getting fed up and burnt out with page builders could actually have by using a tool like that. So I mean, that would be quite cool to see.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in seeing where that goes for sure.
It's honestly, it is worth taking a look at. Like I say, it really impressed me how good that was when I looked at it a couple of times and created some landing pages and things. And again, it's a good option if you want simple landing pages that don't need to do a ton of other things like A/B testing and so on. It could be a great option for that side of things. Okay, so final thing we're going to talk about before we go on to some Q&As, and that is going to be, we've kind of covered it a little bit today, the bricks builder. So just want to kind of have a little talk about what we kind of think of that, get your feedback on it in the comment section as well, to say, you know, have you looked at it? Is this something you're kind of interested in? We've already talked about people getting potentially burnt out with page builders and the amount of page builders that kind of come out. But I think every once in a while, and I kind of noticed this when Elementor came out probably 4 or 5 years ago, the first time I sort of did any content on it, and you had the big players at the time, which was Divi and Visual Composer, with and probably Beaver Builder. But Beaver Builder, I think, is more of a niche kind of product. I think there's a pretty smaller, very loyal fan base to Beaver Builder that isn't necessarily
Beaver
quite.
Builder is the cult classic,
Yeah,
like in
yeah, it's the
movies.
B
It's the
movie.
cult classic of page builders.
It's like the B movie that everybody loves, but no one understands why they love it so much. Maybe that's doing a bit of a disservice, but you know what I mean. I don't think I've seen any real hype since Elementor came out with the free version, like I say, about 4 or 5 years ago. That kind of really got hyped up very, very quickly. And I'm seeing a similar kind of trend happening, should we say, with bricks at the moment. That's come out to, from my front, little fanfare. I didn't know anything about it until about 2 days ago, where it was posted up onto my Facebook group. And I bought Happy Files Pro, which is the company's other product, probably 2 years ago for like $10 for the lifetime access to it. And I mean, that's gone now. The lifetime access is gone, which is another thing that people are sort of poking at, you know, that they're doing this lifetime access for a reduced fee, 40% off at the moment. But what people are not necessarily seeing is that this is a limited offer, it's a launch offer, and this isn't going to be something that stays lifetime forevermore. This is to get early adopters, to get users onto the platform, and I think then it will actually go over to an annual payment plan kind of thing, which I think, in all honesty, is the right way to go about these kinds of things, because it gives you sustainable income, you know, much the same way as care plans like we talked about at the beginning. But I think it's one of the first ones I've seen in a long time where there is a sense of excitement, especially the fact that this is version 1 and it's shipped with so many solid options. Yes, there's quirks. Yes, there's some things that are missing. Some things would be nice to be tweaked to get a better experience. But on the whole, where I tested it out over the last day or so, I'm really blown away by just how feature rich it is for a V1 product. I mean, I know you haven't tried it yet, or not too much, but I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think there's room in the market for this particular builder?
I'll be 100% honest. So the creator of it messaged me, like you said, maybe 2 or 3 days ago,
Mm-hmm.
and told me about it. It was the first I'd ever heard about it. I went to the website, and nothing on the website, marketing wise, stood out to me of like, you need to drop your page builder and try this because this is so much better. Like nothing on there stood out to me in that sense. And there was no way to try it for free.
Hmm.
So there's no free version. There was no sandbox on the website where I could demo it or anything. So for me, I wasn't initially, you know, that excited about it. However, I bought Happy Files like you did for like $9 or $10 for lifetime access, and it's a fantastic plugin, and it's gotten really great updates ever since. And the creator is very nice and has always been very cool. He offered me a version of the Bricks Builder to test it out and see what I think. So I took that and played with it myself for an hour or so. Had he not done that, I probably would have not purchased it based on what I had seen at that point. Now, somebody like Paul C comes out with a video and explains all these cool things. I probably would have bit after that point. But yeah, like you, I was really, really impressed with how far this is, to feel like it came out of nowhere. Like, to be fair, he's probably been working on this a very, very long time.
Hmm.
It didn't happen overnight, I'm sure. But for it to come out of nowhere and to have as much as it does in it already is pretty impressive. But for me, like, I don't think any of these new page builders, Bricks included, uh, none of them are going to have a chance to compete at this exact moment unless they're focused on performance, because that seems to be what everybody's worried about right now with any page builder, especially with Gutenberg getting closer to being something everybody can use to build just about anything. If it doesn't perform well, then I don't think it's really going to stand out. From the little bit of testing I did, which was certainly not scientific and not thorough, it seemed to perform really well. The code, when you inspect the code, looks nice and clean. So those parts of it are really impressive to me. Obviously, I think there are plenty of things they can do, and you pointed out some of those in your video. To make it better from where it stands right now, just some little improvements and tweaks, as well as they're going to need more features to compete. I don't think it's not going to compete directly with Elementor or even
Yeah.
Oxygen at this point, but I think it's a much better product than Gutenberg is. At this point, at a V1 first update, I think Gutenberg just had its 100th update. So, for me, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think you're probably bang on there. I mean, if we can kind of compare it. I mean, if you think when Elemental version 1 came out, or when Oxygen came out to start off, because I think I tried Oxygen probably version 2, or maybe late version 1, early version 2. I can't quite remember. But when you kind of compare the feature set that this is kind of shipped with in version 1, it's kind of mind blowing compared to what came out previous. I think there's obviously the benefit of being able to see what other builders are doing and what people want, and being active, or at least just sitting back and lurking inside the various different Facebook groups to see what people are unhappy with, what people want, what these page builders are not giving them, and then creating a product that has solid foundation with those key tools inside it. So I think if Thomas, who's one of the key developers behind it, which I think might actually be watching tonight's live stream, I think they went about that in a very solid way. Is this page builder dead, which I kind of talked about 2 weeks ago? I think in the same way where people said a theme's dead, I think you've got to look at the difference between people like you and I that do this for a living, or have done
Mhm.
it for a living, compared to the hobbyist that might be looking for a tool that allows them to build a site, or build a couple of sites, or make a couple of extra dollars on the side, doing it for some family, friends, and what have you. They're probably not necessarily going to be looking for the same kind of features that you or I might be looking for. So I don't think page builders are going to die anytime soon, because I think speed, again, is one of those things that when you do this for a living and it is your main income, and then Google comes out and says, if your website speed sucks, we're going to penalize you for it, you've got to sit up and take notice. You'd be daft not to.
Mhm.
But we're in a different, we're in the industry a little bit more ingrained than a lot I would have thought of the people that even use tools like Elementor. I mean, Elementor is like 7 million strong, I think, at the moment. I'd be curious to know, A, what percentage of that are professionals, and B, what percentage of that are using anything but the free version. You know, because to invest their money and their time and effort into it is not necessarily something they would want to do, but they still want to be able to create pages in a visual, easy to use fashion. So I don't think page builders are going to go out anytime soon unless Gutenberg and WordPress turn around and go, right, page builders don't work with us anymore. We're cutting ties, which I think would be crazy to
Yeah,
do, but you never
I don't
know.
think that's happening.
Yeah, exactly. It could happen. So I think there's room in the market for something that caters for what people actually need. So I'm excited to see where this will go. Like I say, I know it's still only version 1. And we always get that shiny toy kind of syndrome where you try something out and it's got some cool features and you think, "Ooh, this is great." But I think if it concentrates on dynamic content to make that side of things even easier, because we were talking before we went live about how easy it is to very quickly start introducing dynamic content into a bricks page, which is way easier than some other builders out there make it.
I
I think
think
it,
I think it's easier than every builder makes it.
yeah, it probably is. It is literally like 2 clicks and you've got dynamic content, inline content, no messing about with divs and spans and all that kind of junk. I think if they focus on those strengths and they look at a market, because I think it's going to be very difficult to topple someone like Elementor off that perch right now and for quite some time. I think if they focus on the right market sector, they could make a really solid product for that market sector and make a really solid income from that. Don't know. I mean, what are people's thoughts? I mean, Elijah, very very good point. Very simple comment. The bricks dynamic content tags are beautiful. Exactly. It's crazy simple. If you know how to write them, you don't even need to click on any buttons. You can literally just open up a curly bracket, type in what you want, close your curly bracket, your dynamic content's in there. Boom. It doesn't get much simpler than that, does it?
It is interesting. You said, they obviously were listening to all the things people were complaining about. It's interesting just looking at the interface of Bricks Builder because uh you can see the influence from several different page builders right in there. Like to me, the bar across the top that has like the desktop, uh tablet, mobile landscape, and the preview button. I mean, it's straight. I would be confused if I was just to see a screenshot of that and a screenshot from Webflow. It's the same thing. Like it's that similar to me. Of course, I also think the way Webflow does that is the best way there is that I've seen. So kudos to Bricks Builder for recognizing something like that and building it right in there. But you can definitely see the direct influence from a lot of these different tools inside of there.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think that's a bad thing because I think what
No, I
that
don't
does is
either.
it gives you immediate comfort in the
Familiarity.
builder. Yeah. So yes, there are influences from, like I said, I think in my video yesterday, if Divi, Elementor, and what else did I say, Oxygen had a love child, it would probably be Bricks, and it probably would be because I think they've taken key elements from there that people are accustomed to. It's the same as e-commerce. The shopping basket is in the top right hand corner of pretty much every e-commerce site because everybody knows where it's going to be. So they don't think about it. And I think the same can be said. Yes, if you look at it, yes, the widgets on the left hand side look very much like Elementor. But
Mhm.
then they've taken that, which is already a solid way of working, and then they've given you things like you can pin the widgets to the top. How cool is
That
that?
is such a cool I didn't know that when I used it until I watched your video, and then I'm like, "Oh," that's one of those things where I'm like, "Why doesn't every page builder
Yep,
do this?" Like, there is, like, 4 or 5 widgets that I use 99% of the
yep.
time. If I could just pin those to the top, how much time would I save? That's a killer feature.
Exactly. But you can see that the thought has been put into the interface to make it something that becomes, it works for you, not against you, which, with certain different other platforms, there is an element of that working against you. It feels counterintuitive to what you want to do. And it's kind of why I kind of brought up about the whole hierarchy of the page being on the left hand side underneath. That once you click somewhere else, that goes back and everything closes
Mhm.
right up. Which to me was a little bit counterintuitive. That needs to be something its own dedicated panel on the right hand side. You can enable and disable. A la Oxygen, which does that really well, and have that there.
It's
So when you
it's
want to use it, what's that?
let's debate this. So, in Oxygen, that panel sticks to the right-hand side, right? The structure panel. Um, and you can open it or close it, right? But it sticks there. In Elementor, they introduced the navigator, which is like a floating thing you can just move around. You prefer in Oxygen where it's stuck to the side?
I don't prefer. I think it's one of those things that I think each one of them has a different way of working. Like I like the way the Brizzy does things. The thing I don't like about the way Oxygen does it is that once you start to get down, which is very quick and easy to get down multiple levels, you end up with a sideways scroll bar,
Mhm.
which is fine on a big screen, but on a smaller screen, if you're doing something on a laptop, for example, that becomes a bit of a pain point. So I don't think one's necessarily better per se than another, but I think if they can take, if with bricks they can take the best points of each of those, so it is something you can open and close when you want to use it, like most of them do, that you do have a simplified view. I love the fact you can rename them really, really easily. I
Mhm.
love the fact that when you click on one of those, depending upon whether it's a row or a column or a section, gives you immediate access to deleting it, duplicating it, those kinds of things. No right clicking because you don't need to. It's just click on the little three dots and you get extra options. Seems really intuitive to me. Just needs to be separate. And I know when I spoke to Thomas earlier on in a conversation, that's something they'll be implementing because it does make sense. So I like what they're doing with the interface. Is it perfect? None of these are perfect. They've all got things that work. If you're a left brainer or a right brainer, some things are going to be so natural you never think about it, and other things are going to be I just do not understand why that's there. But I think they take in some of the good or the best points from the different builders, and they're using those. Like for me, the color coding, like you spoke about earlier on, being like a bit rainbow esque based upon whether it's a column, a row, a section, those kinds of things. I'm not a big fan of that. Not so much the
I
color
get why
coding.
that's there, and from like, I understand why it's there and why it would be helpful, but I just don't visually like the way it looks.
Yeah, I find it awkward, and I think I said this in the video. I use two 32-inch 4K monitors. So you can imagine when you're going to go for the top left where you've got
Mm.
the one panel, right the way over to the right-hand side to click on to select a section, that becomes a bit of a pain because it's just too much of this. And with a trackpad as opposed to a mouse, which I tend to use now with the Mac, like it is just a lot of unneeded interaction with the trackpad, as it were.
You're almost gonna get a workout, which
You are well,
yeah.
but your one arm is, yeah. But the little things like that, I think they frustrated me a little bit yesterday. But these are small niggles, I think, in
Yeah.
what is ultimately a really good launch product that superseded my expectations. I mean, I remember trying Brizzy out, and that was good, but that had to go quite a long time before it got to the level of the amount of tools and the ease of use that you had with what Bricks launched with. And I think that's probably what I'm most excited about is that if this is version one, where's it going to be in version two? How much further forward is if people support it and hop on board this platform? That's the biggest thing. Will people hop on board the platform? Only time will tell with that side of things. So
Mm.
I don't know. Hopefully, because I think what Thomas is doing there and the other people involved in it is pretty solid.
Yeah, I think for the launch price they have right now, obviously this depends on where you're at, and how life is going for you. But at the price they have it in comparison to other tools out there, I think it's worth investing in if you can spare the money. If you can say I can drop, I don't forget what it was, $150 or
Yeah.
whatever. If you could drop that and it not hurt you, not bother you to do that, I think it's a tool worth investing in to see where it goes. Maybe it's not your everyday builder for every single thing. Maybe it ends up being, but I think it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, and I think if you were looking for a platform that allows you to do, really easy dynamic content to get associated with, build-in sites and so on. Because at the end of the day, I need to sort of answer a question that was sort of popped up in the comments. Does it come with a theme? Basically, what Bricks is a theme with a builder integrated into it. You don't use external themes. It's all in one platform. So the theme is basically a bare bones theme, which has the builder that allows you to do all that, including all the different template files like your archives, your 404s, your homepage, all those kinds of things. And integration with Gutenberg, which I kind of found a little bit weird to start off with. And we'll come on to answer some of the questions about this in a little bit. But I forgot what I was going to talk about again. I think I'm obviously getting way too old, or I need to start
You're,
drinking beer again.
I was going to say you're not drinking tonight and you can't
Mm.
remember anything. I think that's the key.
Alcohol is my friend.
Yes.
It is my friend. Yeah, so I think we've kind of covered the excitement that kind of surrounds a tool like Bricks. Like I say, for me, if they can make the whole dynamic thing, oh, I know what I was going to say. If you're looking for a pretty solid platform to build dynamic sites and you want to limit your expenditure, then you could take a look at Bricks, which, like you say, is the launch price of $149 for 1,000 websites. Sounds familiar. And use a tool like MetaBox, which is on lifetime offer over on AppSumo, which I think, again, that's $149 and you get unlimited sites on there. I think when they bring out the ability to create custom loops, to put conditional logic, and some of those core things that I think you need to work with dynamic content, and then link it up to a tool like MetaBox, which gives you separate databases if you want to have a lot of content and you want to filter that quickly and you want to be able to display that really quickly, that might be a good option. For $300, you could literally have 1,000 website development platform and an unlimited platform when it comes to dynamic content. That's pretty compelling, I think, wherein there's no additional expenditure moving forward. You have those in your toolbox ready to go, kind of thing. So I think that's quite an exciting kind of idea, especially now seeing as a tool like Elementor have upped the price to $9.99 per year for 1,000 websites, which is a big old chunk of change for lots and lots of people. So, you know, there's there's options there. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, before Kyle has to shoot off in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to do... Let's start again. So if anybody's got any comments, questions, anything you'd like to raise with either myself, the topics we've covered tonight, or for Kyle, drop those into the comment section. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying the video, because as like I say, it does help YouTube understand that it likes what we're doing around here. So let's have a little look at some of the comments. So Susan, you're asking the question, MetaBox instead of ACF. Reason I said MetaBox instead of ACF is because if you want to have tools that you can use that you don't have an ongoing cost, because ACF no longer have that lifetime deal, and you want to have the ability to have a database structure like tools like MetaBox with custom meta fields and custom post types and those kinds of things, separate from WordPress. In other words, instead of having it into the WordPress database structure, you have separate database tables specifically for that data and those meta fields. A tool like MetaBox is a better option because, from my understanding, and this is pretty limited because I haven't actually tested it myself yet, that will give you a speed increase. It'll make your database lighter, and it should also help with filtering, searching, and so on bigger websites. Smaller websites, you probably get away quite happily with a tool like ACF, Pods, Toolkit, whichever one it is, I can never get it right. They will give you that. But if you want that ability to scale your database, then maybe something like MetaBox is worth taking a look at. And that's why I said ACF. So that's why I said MetaBox as opposed to ACF. I mean, you're an ACF kind of guy, aren't you, Kyle?
I am. I've used Pods a little bit back in the day, but once I invested, luckily I bought ACF while it was still a lifetime deal. That's pretty much all I've used. It does everything I need it to do. So I guess this kind of goes back to our like shiny object thing. Like MetaBox comes up, I don't even look at it. Like I don't have any issues with what I'm using, so I've just not even paid attention to it. Now you'll go out and do a video on it and I'll be buying it, so I'll just wait for that.
I hear that a lot.
I need to turn notifications off for your videos.
I'll just message you directly. Add another $200 on.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I mean, for me, I mean, you know that dynamic content is kind of what my channel is kind of focuses on. So I've looked at MetaBox before, and people have sort of said, why don't you do it on this plugin and so on? But up until now, cost prohibitive for what it does. It didn't integrate with 99% of page builders, and I don't think it really integrates that well just yet. But Bricks has it native integration for it. Looking on the Facebook group from the developers where they've been talking about the future of it, one of the things they're talking about is that they want to open up more integrations with more page builders. So I'm kind of looking at potentially investing in it as a bit of a sleeper product, like we've said, where I might not use it or do much with it right now, but in 6 or 12 months' time where it becomes a more useful tool for many people, many use cases, then I might take a look at actually using it and creating some content on it. And if Bricks grows the way that I hope it will, then there's already an integration option between those two tools to start off with. So it's kind of interesting to see where all those kinds of things go and if they do open up to more page builders like they say they're going to do. So, what else do we have? Um, let's have a little look. Michael Wright, I tested one of the pre-built bricks templates and it got 99% in GT metrics, 97 in Google Mobile, and 100 on Google Desktop. That's pretty good going. I mean, I was testing out because there's a lot of comments came up about this earlier on after my video yesterday. I wanted to sort of test it out with just the stuff that I just been throwing together to see how it worked. And out of the box, it was average. It was average, but then I hadn't optimized the images. I just literally just bunged a pile of things on the page to see how the heck it all worked. But very quickly, by using some of the normal techniques you'd use, even just using something like Auto Optimize, which is a free plugin, you could already get that up to the high 80s when it comes to mobile and just under 100 with the desktop. So I think out of the box, it's got potential to be pretty quick. But and I'm sure, Carl, you could attest to this as well. The number of times you run tests on GT metrics and Google page speed and stuff like that, you run them, say, let's say you run 5 of those without changing anything. And you see each time you do it, the number changes because there are so many things at play. It's not just how fast is your website from how you built it. It's also the server, the amount of traffic going back and forth. All those different things play a part. And I think it's a little bit misguided when people go, oh, this is better than that because look, this scored 10 points better. There are way more things to take into consideration than just the tools you use to create the page that you're benchmarking. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And anytime I run those tests, I'm just in the habit now of I run it 3 times and kind of I don't get out a calculator and find the exact average, but I'll kind of see from those 3 tests, what's kind of in the middle of those three because it's always a little bit different. But like I said, I think if 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 Bricks isn't there with the performance, then I don't know that it's doing enough right now to really make a huge dent. From what I saw, it is making it with the performance. So I think out of the box, it's already going to beat something like Elementor in terms of performance. Probably not Gutenberg, and be very comparable with Oxygen just straight out of the box. And I think it's going to have to do that to really compete. So
Yeah, and I think, whether you like Gutenberg or not, and I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Gutenberg. I mean, the Gutenberg plugin itself, you do have to put several other plugins on top of that to make it a truly usable platform, but you can get some really solid results. I mean, when I did the e-commerce site using Gutenberg, using Stackable, and using the Blocksy theme, that got great speed scores straight out of the box, and there was no real effort to do it. So it is really quite straightforward, unless you've got some really complex designs, which, let's be honest about these days, that's not really what most websites are all about, unless you are promoting something very specific that is graphic and animation heavy. I think you can get away with using quite minimal tools to get great looking results. If speed is your main concern, then you have to realistically look at what are the things that you don't need to include on your website to make it as optimized as possible for your audience and the speed in which you are looking to attain. When you want to have all animations and effects and transparent, sort of PNGs and things, everything's going to have an impact upon the speed score that you have. It's a simple fact. There's no two ways about it. Have you ever looked at getting into Gutenberg yourself, or is this something that you're kind of thinking, I just don't want to even touch that bloody thing right now?
no, I almost feel like I'm on this inevitable train to using Gutenberg if I'm still using WordPress in the future, right? I kind of just feel like eventually that's where I'm going to go. And so when Gutenberg first came out, I dove into it deep and realized this is a huge mess and I'm not touching this. And then a few months later, I tried it again and it got a little bit better and I was able to get a little bit further. And then right at the end of last year, I started playing with it again. That's actually kind of how me trying Oxygen actually happened. I did a test of building the simple landing page in Elementor and then rebuilding it in Gutenberg. And this time I was able to recreate the page completely in Gutenberg. Simple page. It was like 4 sections, nothing fancy in it. I was able to complete it and I was like, holy cow, the performance is so much better. And I actually did that same test again in Oxygen. But I just still feel like for me, there's not everything you need in Gutenberg there, and there's still too many things that like, oh well, this doesn't work, so you have to like do this workaround. So for me, it's just like I got to make money. When a client hires me to do a job, I need to be able to get in there and do the job. So for me, it's still too much fooling around at this point. But I almost feel like I'm like I said, on an inevitable train to using Gutenberg one day.
I think the biggest hurdle for people that transition over to Gutenberg is the fact that it's not a WYSIWYG editor. You know, you're not seeing what it looks like in the context of the design. And that, I think, really hurts people. You know, if you go back, if you ever used like Visual Composer back in the day,
Mhm.
which is where I kind of cut my teeth as the first page builder, that was primarily just building blocks with nothing in the back end. The only thing you really saw was the text, you know, and these
Right.
blocks all over the place. So you were constantly switching back and forth between the front end and the back end whenever you made changes. And that's one of the things that is really annoying. And I think that's very indicative of what Gutenberg does. It forces you to have a back and forth just to see the
Mhm.
design you're working on and see what's different in the editor to what's different on the front end. And that's really frustrating and time consuming.
I I almost think at this the last time I was really trying with Gutenberg, it was almost more frustrating than when you know with something like what's the thing you just mentioned? When you know the back end doesn't look anything like the front end, and you know that for a fact, so you have to go back and forth. With Gutenberg, it kind of looks like the front end. Like it looks similar to the front end, but not exactly. So it's almost more frustrating that like, I thought I just fixed all this. And when you go look on the front end, it's you actually did more harm than good or whatever it may be. So it's just that there's like it's like when you're playing a video game with lag or something, right? It's like you keep having to go back and forth. You're not sure exactly where you are at any point. So
Yeah, and I think Gutenberg is kind of relying heavily on third party plugins now to bring extra blocks, extra functionality. And you get to the point there where you plug in all the holes that Gutenberg has with these third-party plugins, at which point are you just going to get up to the amount of extra code and the extra sort of resources required just to use a page builder? Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I don't think Gutenberg's necessarily relying on third parties. I just think when you task something like WordPress, which is this huge open source undertaking to build something this huge, uh, it moves slow like government moves slow. Like we have an idea for a bill and we have to send it to Congress, and then it has to go back here and it has to do this, and these people have to check it, and this person's mad about this one thing, and that's just how things move through WordPress. So uh, I don't know when Thomas started Bricks Builder, but I'm sure had he been in charge solely of making all the decisions for Gutenberg, it would have been done and working fine by now, right? And I just think private companies can move fast like that. They don't have to worry about the bureaucracy of everything, where anything inside WordPress is just going to take a long time. And like you said, now you have to bolt so many things onto it because it's still to me a beta product. Like
Mm.
it's live inside of our WordPress dashboard and it's ready to go. And like I said, there's been like 100 updates, but to me, it still feels like it's kind of in that beta stage.
I think beta might be a little bit sort of generous in a lot of cases, if I'm honest at
But then you
first.
have some people that are building awesome things with Gutenberg and like tell you you just don't know how to use it yet. Like you haven't spent enough time with it, and they're building a WP Rocket's website is awesome, totally awesome, and built with Gutenberg. I don't know, so maybe part of it is just me, but
Yeah, yeah. And Elijah comes up with a good thing. He basically echoes what I was just about to say. It's like development by committee or design by committee. If you've ever worked with that kind of thing, you know, as a designer, when you've got 10 people involved making every decision, you get nowhere. It's one step
yeah.
forward, 12 steps back. Super difficult, really frustrating to kind of deal with. Now, I'm conscious of the fact that Kyle has got to go and be the good dad and sort out picking up the kids. So we're going to have
I,
one more
I could
question
spare
and then
about
we're going
20
to.
more minutes, so we'll be
Oh, if we've
good
got
for
20 minutes,
then.
we'll have two more questions then. Okay, so the first things first, let's have a little look. Richard, good to see you in tonight, my young man. I'm saying, as this is sponsored by Crockablock, hopefully they'll realize the need for integration into other builders, including Bricks, Oxygen, Brizzy, Divi, etc. I would love to see that. I would love to see more of these tools that have really powerful tool sets being able to work and integrate with more tools out there. You know, I'm super excited the fact that we can now start to use Jet Engine, Jet Smart Filters, and so on, with tools like Gutenberg. Love it or hate it, at least if you combine that with things like cadence blocks or stackable, those kinds of things, which opens up more design sort of opportunities and global colors and things like that, then you can start to harness the power. I think this is where Gutenberg has to go. I think it has to be a platform for really good third-party tools to take it in the direction that we are used to going in. The dynamic content. I mean, we know that Gutenberg is not particularly great when it comes to mobile side of things. It's not great and responsive. There's lots of people complaining about how it's not great at that side of things. So I kind of hope that they do at least open up, have a nice open API, and we can have third-party companies that have solid solid platforms, solid backgrounds in developing and expanding the tools we use, and they can do that with a tool like Gutenberg. So fingers crossed we can get more like that and they can integrate more. But like you say, I think this whole development and design by committee is really hampering what Gutenberg can do. And maybe it would have been better if they'd actually bought out another company that was a page builder company and took on their experience and knowledge to build a product that probably would be way, way ahead of where it is right now had they done something like that. But that's just my opinion on it.
Imagine how mad everybody'd be if they bought the wrong page builder, though.
It's very, very true. It's very true. Okay, well, what I'm going to say is I'm going to give Kyle the sort of the microphone for the next sort of couple of minutes, and he can just tell you all about how you can find out more about Kyle, more about his agency, more about the admin bar, some of the exciting things he's got going on there. So I'm going to quickly hand this over because, like I say, I don't want to keep you from going picking the kids up because I don't think the wife or anybody else would be too happy if that was the case. So I'm going to quickly hand it over and let you have the microphone.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I will say I saw a comment in here where we spent most of this talking about page builders, and I think the original idea was care plans and more, and we got on talking about page builders. One thing we didn't mention, and I'll just plug since you said I could plug, when we're talking about care plans, one of the things we came up with at the admin bar is a thing called the website owner's manual. If we had gotten into that, I was going to tell everybody there's a coupon code for that. If anybody's heard of it, I'm not going to do a long spiel telling you what it is. You can go to theadminbar.com and you'll see a thing for the WOM, or the website owner's manual. If you use the coupon code Thanks Paul, you'll get 40% off as way. Thanks Paul for letting me plug this. So you can check that out if you're interested. That makes it around $20 or so. But yeah, if anybody wants to come hang out with us at the admin bar, we have a community there of about 4,000 folks. We're very, very active. There's 30 or 40 posts per day. There's lots of great conversations going on in there. We do a newsletter every week, kind of a recap of the best things going on inside the group. So there's definitely lots of support you can find in there, and good conversations with other agency owners. And we tend to keep things very, very civil inside of there. So I'd love to see you there. You can go to theadminbar.com/group, and that will redirect you to the Facebook group. Just make sure you fill in all the questions so we can approve you in there. But we'd definitely love to hang out with you.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you very much for joining me tonight on the live stream. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. It's always fun to talk about all the tech and the things that kind of go on in our industry. So I want to say thank you, and I'm sure everybody else has really appreciated you being here tonight and sharing your knowledge, your experience, and just having a solid chat. So thank you very much, Kyle. Thank you to everybody that's been in tonight. Just remember, it's 2 weeks now, and we'll have another lockdown live stream. So 2 weeks tonight. And if you haven't already picked up the website owner's manual or joined up to the admin bar, head over there after this video and go and take a look at those. So thank you very much, Kyle, for joining me tonight. And thank you everybody else for being part of tonight's live stream. All take care, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Take care.
Thanks, Paul.